What if I told you the perfect Colorado road trip included snowstorms in spring, altitude headaches, ancient cliff cities, giant sand dunes, haunted hotels, and a moose family casually stealing the show? Because apparently Colorado looked at every landscape in America and said, why choose just one? Over 1 week in May, we drove Colorado's ultimate highlight reel, from the deserts of Four Corners to the top of the Rockies to the tallest dunes in North America. And at least twice, we genuinely questioned whether we can see the highlights of an entire state in just a week. To that we say, hold your beer and let us know what we missed. Our plan seems straightforward. Visit all 4 national parks, stay at some of the most historic hotels in the state, also visit most of the attractions we've always read about without ever being there long enough to say, what now? In our ignorance, a week felt about right. Most people enter Colorado expecting mountains. We entered through a giant patch of desert where 4 states awkwardly touch each other like coworkers forced into a team-building exercise. Welcome to Four Corners. We opted against fighting the crowds to get that picture of straddling the 4 states to spend more time at our first stop, Mesa Verde National Park, which is one of the most important archaeological sites in North America. And honestly, the photos do not prepare you for this place. These aren't ruins scattered randomly through the canyon walls. These were apartment complexes. Cliff dwellings provided natural defenses from predators and raiders, better climate control in winter cold and summer heat, and a more stable water supply with predictable seepage through sandstone springs. Entire communities built into cliffs by the ancestral Puebloans over 700 years ago, and the biggest one, Cliff Palace, had roughly 150 rooms and more than 20 kivas used for ceremonial and community meetings. That made it one of the largest cliff dwellings ever discovered on the continent. And here's the part nobody tells you. The people who built these cities didn't mysteriously vanish. They adapted. At its peak, over 25,000 people lived in these dwellings. Drought, resource pressure, and social changes likely pushed them into areas that are now New Mexico and Arizona, where descendant Pueblo and Ute communities still live today. Walking through Mesa Verde feels less like visiting ruins and more like realizing American history is far older and more complicated than most of us learned in school. By evening, we rolled into Durango and checked into the legendary Strater Hotel. Built in 1887 during the silver mining boom, the Strater looks like somebody trapped a Victorian saloon inside a time machine, and honestly, if a ghost offered us whiskey in the lobby, we wouldn't question it. The next morning, Colorado decided we'd become part of a weather documentary. Because this was supposed to be a spring road trip instead of a full-scale mountain snowstorm, we headed north on the famous $1 Million Highway, one of the most spectacular and mildly terrifying roads in America. Although we drove it a couple of years ago and found it to be gorgeous and fairly benign in the autumn, this trip we learned how the road gained its harrowing reputation. No guardrails, massive drop-offs, snow blowing sideways, and visibility that occasionally suggested we were driving into another dimension. On our drive, a tree fell right in front of us, blocking the road, right behind the car driving ahead of us. Our takeaway? If you decide to drive over a fallen tree, do it near the top of the tree where the log is the thinnest. Sadly, we had no photo or video of this event, presumably because the passengers were in shock. Later, we were nearly hit by a speeding snowplow heading in the opposite direction. Never underestimate the dangers of other drivers. The highway gets its name from one of 3 theories. It either cost $1 million per mile to build, or was worth $1 million in recovered ore, or requires millions of dollars worth of therapy after driving it in a blizzard. We believe the third one. After passing through several scenic towns, we reached Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park. And this place is absurd. The canyon is so steep and narrow that parts of it receive only 33 minutes of sunlight per day. That's less sunlight than most office workers experience. The Gunnison River spent millions of years carving through some of the hardest rock on Earth, creating cliffs over 2,000 feet deep, which means the canyon basically exists because geology had an epic fight where both sides are still fighting. Every overlook somehow was more dramatic than the last. The painted wall is as dramatic to look at as it is tall. It's taller than all but one building on the planet. And every gust of freezing wind reminded us we still packed for a spring road trip. That evening, we reached Glenwood Springs and checked into the historic Hotel Colorado, specifically the Bell Tower Suite, which felt less like a room and more like we accidentally inherited a railroad tycoon's mansion. Fun fact, the hotel opened in 1893 and hosted everyone from presidents to mobsters. The mirroring suite on the other bell tower was used by Molly Brown, the mining heiress who survived the sinking of the Titanic in 1912. Even Theodore Roosevelt stayed here for a bear hunt. So legend has it that maids made him the world's first stuffed bear, and his daughter named it Teddy. As with all legends, there's more convincing reports of how the first teddy bear came about, but Kathy had to buy one here because every good story, whether true or not, should be rewarded. The next morning, we left Glenwood Springs in rain, which quickly became snow, which quickly became us questioning every life decision that led us here. You should try coming here in the summer sometime.
So you're saying May is wintertime here?
Well, it does appear to be. It has a lot of the trappings of wintertime, like the snow. Our destination? The Stanley Hotel. Yes, that Stanley Hotel. The one that inspired Stephen King's The Shining after he stayed there in 1974. And honestly, showing up during a snowstorm did not make the place feel less haunted. The Stanley actually helped inspire modern tourism in Estes Park. Its founder, Freeland Stanley, from Stanley Steamer Automobiles, came to Colorado for his tuberculosis recovery and decided, you know what this mountain valley needs? A giant luxury hotel. And surprisingly, he was right. If it looks familiar, this was the hotel used in the movie Dumb and Dumber where Harry and Lloyd stayed on their trip to Colorado. The next morning, we headed into Rocky Mountain National Park. Our plan was simple: drive Trail Ridge Road over the Continental Divide to the other side of the park. Colorado's plan was apparently different. We explored Bear Lake and Sprague Lake through the intermittent snow flurries and slushed over trails, which honestly made the scenery even prettier and much colder. Meanwhile, the elk appeared completely unbothered. These animals wander around Estes Park like they personally own the property, which, to be fair, they probably did first. And here's where Colorado humbled us. We assumed Trail Ridge Road would be open early because the Rockies had historically low snowpack this year. Instead, the storm during our visit delayed the opening past even the traditional opening target of Memorial Day. So our grand alpine crossing ended at Many Park's Curve Overlook, where the road disappeared into snow and disappointment. Still a gorgeous viewpoint though. We drove towards the Fall River entrance looking for more wildlife. We found more elk and deer next to the road, although we didn't find any bighorn sheep despite a crossing area along the road. And then we heard about a moose sighting near Beaver Ponds, so we headed back into the heights of the park. And this became one of the best wildlife encounters we've ever filmed. A mother moose eating right next to the boardwalk, and her youngster frolicking in the field, eating, splashing, and casually existing like they knew they were the stars of an episode, which they are. Honestly, at this point, Kathy and I were just supporting characters in a moose documentary. The following morning, we headed south to Colorado Springs to ride the famous Pikes Peak Cog Railway. This railway has been hauling visitors up America's mountains since 1891. What makes the Cog Railway different is that it doesn't rely on steel rails for traction. It has a toothed center third rail the train climbs with the gear being spun by powerful engines, allowing it to climb much more steeply than a conventional train. This is the highest cog railroad in the world, and there's a good reason for that we'll get to in a minute. And America's Mountain isn't just marketing. Catherine Lee Bates was inspired to write America the Beautiful after visiting Pikes Peak, though she probably visited in better weather. At the summit, the railway gives you only about 40 minutes before heading back down, not because they're impatient, because you just jumped to over 14,000 feet with basically zero acclimatization, which means altitude sickness can hit fast. They even have EMTs standing by, which makes your shortness of breath feel unsurprising. And nothing ruins a vacation like discovering your lungs suddenly filed a complaint and you'll be suffering nausea in time for dinner. All the 40-minute stay did to us was make us feel a bit sleepy. We had time to take in the views from the top and have a bite to eat at the mountain house. We tried their legendary cinnamon donuts, which taught us that obviously we weren't donut aficionados. That evening we checked into the Garden of the Gods Resort. We understand that our elite discerning subscribers are rightly thinking, why didn't they stay at the Broadmoor? We agree. That hotel matches the historic hotels we occupied at each of our other stops. However, we've stayed there before and decided to find a more economical alternative. We found our bargain digs to be every bit as comfortable as the more famous resort. We saved hundreds of dollars that night and enjoyed better views. The views onto the rocks looked fake. This resort is our value tip of the journey. You're welcome. The red rock formations of Garden of the Gods rise straight out of the earth like somebody dropped Utah in the middle of Colorado by accident. The next morning, we drove through Garden of the Gods, which became a public park because railroad magnate Charles Elliott Perkins decided this place is too beautiful for developers to ruin. Honestly, a rare billionaire decision we can all support. Then we headed towards Royal Gorge Bridge and Park. When it opened in 1929, the Royal Gorge Bridge was the highest bridge in the world. And standing above the Arkansas River still feels mildly unreasonable, especially if you dislike heights. The ride seemed to capitalize on this understandable phobia. Then suddenly, Colorado changed landscapes again, because now we're heading into the Great Sand Dunes National Park. The tallest dunes in North America rise here against a backdrop of 14,000-foot mountains, and the contrast is honestly bizarre. It looks like the Sahara wandered into the Rockies and decided to stay. The dunes formed over thousands of years as wind trapped sand against the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, which means this entire park basically exists because geology kept sweeping dirt into the same corner. From there, we crossed Wolf Creek Pass and descended into Pagosa Springs. That night, we stayed at the Springs Resort. And after a week of snow, rain, altitude, and driving, these hot springs felt medically necessary. On our final day, we exited south out of Colorado towards one final stretch of discovery for us. We'll make a separate video on some additional wonders we discovered in the Navajo Nation to add to the past video on the subject, but here's a quick recap of what we found. First stop, Shiprock. This massive volcanic rock rises nearly 1,600 feet above the desert floor and holds deep spiritual significance for the Navajo Nation. And seeing it appear in the horizon feels almost supernatural. Then we crossed the little-traveled Red Rock Highway through a dense forest only interrupted by towering red cliffs. This took us to Canyon de Chelly National Monument. We stopped for lunch at the Mummy Cave Overlook, which sounds alarming, because archaeology naming conventions aren't quite subtle. The other overlook on this short spur off the main road is Massacre Cave. We think we made the right choice. Canyon de Chelly has been inhabited for nearly 5,000 years and remains home to Navajo families today. We believe this place is less visited partially because they spell Canyon de Chelly, which most of us would pronounce Chelly. We'll confirm this hypothesis before releasing our full video. Unlike most national monuments, people still actively live and ranch inside the canyon. After going to the visitor center, we learned that touring the canyon itself requires hiring a local Navajo guide. And honestly, that makes sense. Places with this much cultural history deserve to be experienced so the people connected with them. We certainly found this to be true on our first visit to Monument Valley. This also means we have yet another reason to come back. In 7 days, we saw ancient cities, blizzards in spring, 14,000-foot summits, haunted hotels, giant sand dunes, hot springs, moose, elk, and landscapes that look completely different every few hours. Colorado doesn't feel like one state. It feels like somebody combined 5 National Geographic documentaries into a single road trip. And honestly, we'd do it again tomorrow. Even the snowstorm. Okay, maybe not a heavy winter snowstorm. If you enjoyed this adventure, hit subscribe and come travel with us again because apparently John and Kathy still have absolutely no idea how to pack for spring mountain weather. Hit that bell if you want to be alerted to when we release more detailed videos on our visit to the national parks, provide reviews of the historic hotels we visited, explore more of the amazing Navajo Nation, and hear more about what we've personally experienced during our travels. See you next time, and thanks for watching.